Good afternoon to you. I'm Paul Hicks. Good to be with you on this Saturday. And for the next 15 or 20 minutes or so, we're going to be talking Everton after their 2-2 draw away at Sheffield United this lunchtime. And I'm pleased to say that Dave Johnston from the Falcon Blues joins us on the line once again this afternoon. Good to talk to you again, Dave.
Yeah, you too, Paul. Nice to hear from you. You okay?
Yeah, really good to hear from you as well. And it's a couple of weeks since we last spoke, but let's just get your reaction because there is plenty to talk about today, as you can imagine. Let's get your reaction to the 2-2 draw this lunchtime at Sheffield United, and possibly a good game for the neutral this, but how did you rate Everton's performance today?
I thought it was pretty entertaining. I think it was similar to what we'd seen against Fulham and Wolves last week, where it's just like, well, it's two teams going for it. And I think like you said, it was a good game for the neutral. And probably a 2-2 share of the spoils is actually probably, it suits both teams in the end, because I think Everton let themselves down with some bad finishing. Sheffield United probably similar. You know, I think we just got to take it on its own merits, really, that it was a good performance away from home. It's possibly 2 points dropped, but again, it's a point away from home, and we're on the board. Do you know what I mean? We're not languishing on 0 points going into September.
And this is it, isn't it? Because I think any Evertonian right now needs to look for positives after the start of the season that you've had. Clearly, the new signing Beto was outstanding today. Another goal from Danjuma as well. Jared Branthwaite, I thought, had a really good game today.
I think they're the three that stand out, really. I think there were some players in there that were, probably caught played the game rather than the occasion rather than the game, really. I was made up more for Nathan Patterson getting the assist for Danjuma's goal, because he was having a torrid time and has had for a few weeks. He's almost struggling for a bit of form, trying to get a little bit of momentum, getting used to the Premier League and everything else. But Branthwaite's come in, and I think time will tell with Jared. I think there's still time for him to find his feet as well. The second goal there, right in front of the centre defenders. You look at who's at fault, and there was fault pretty much everywhere for their goal. But ultimately, the Beto, Danjuma getting the goal as well. It's now 2-2, which is great to see. Beto is definitely going to be the striker that we've probably been crying out for, even if it's just the kind of player who just makes a nuisance of himself around central defenders and the defensive back line and causes grief for everyone, rather than, if he's not bagging goals, he'll be a nuisance. So it's good to see. It's refreshing to see that we've got a bit of an attacking force about us.
And of course, we saw on Wednesday a victory in the League Cup, beating albeit League 2 opposition in Doncaster Rovers. They got a point at Sheffield United today, a team promoted from the Championship last season. I'm just wondering, really, Dave, whether you regard this as progress for Everton, because at least Everton, as you say, they're now starting to show that they can score goals.
It just gets you back on a steady ground. We've had 3 defeats on the spin since August, and you just got to look at it and you go, well, how many more defeats are we going to get? But we've stopped we've stopped the rot here, haven't we? We've got it, and albeit we scraped through on Wednesday against Doncaster. Let's be honest, that first half was absolutely shocking. And then today we've held our own. We've done all right. I can't, considering we weren't scoring goals, we've now scored 3 in 2 games. I think the rot stopped, as I said. We've just got to start looking at it more positive. We've got to be thinking, okay, well, we've now gone into an international break. We didn't lose every game leading up to the international break. We didn't lose the game right before, which is always one of those games that if you do, you're desperate to try and get back on the pitch to try and make something happen for the next game, and that's when you start slipping up. So to come away with the draw, we've got a lot to talk about, a lot to think about. A lot of players due to come back from injury as well. So I think hitting the brakes and just making sure, okay, we're not going into the international break with a defeat, and we've got something there. We've got something to cling on to. I think it's a reward for us more than anything.
And you've also got a new player in the squad by the name of Beto, who looks like he could be very useful, because we learnt on Tuesday that Everton have signed the Portuguese striker Beto from Udinese for a fee reportedly worth up to 30 million. The 25-year-old has signed a 4-year contract at Goodison, and as a result, he's Everton's 5th signing of the summer. Of course, Dave, Beto made his debut midweek in Everton's 2-1 win over Doncaster Rovers in the Carabao Cup. Of course, he scored a goal Wednesday night. He played well today. He's a big guy, Beto, isn't he? 6'4", but he's got some pace as well.
Yeah, I think that took everyone by surprise, especially on Wednesday. I think we were just going to have like a bit of a mobile unit there that was just going to be lump the ball up. He's going to hold the ball up and just bring everyone into it. But you saw from the goal that he scored that he's got pace about him. He can beat a man. He can find the net. And I think we've been crying out for someone as a striker, as a target man, as a focal point for that long, that I think we'll take to him quite well. I think we've just got to try and get the better service to him, and I think maybe didn't work out as well as it probably should with some of the set pieces that we took today. But I think that'll change with the likes of McNeil back in, Jack Harrison due to come back from injury, and if we can bring Damari Gray in from the Wilderness as well, there's an opportunity there that we can put something in place where it's okay, set pieces, this is how it's going to work. This is it. Beto's going to be your target man. Tarkovsky's going to be in there as well, and it's just a refreshing time to just see an actual striker who's fit, who's on the pitch, and is actually putting himself about, because we haven't had that in such a long time with Calvert-Lewin being out.
This is it. And, when you look at what Beto can offer, I think it's fair to say he's not been a prolific goal scorer in the past couple of seasons. He got 10 goals last season. He got 11 goals in the season before that. Decent returns playing for Udinese. But I think although he's not prolific from that point of view in terms of what some players are capable of doing, I think with Beto, he's still young enough, isn't he, to develop further.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, he's a big lad, and he's got the pace, and he's got the character about him as well to want to bring players into the game. But when you say like he scored 10 goals in one season, 11 in another, 10 goals in this Everton side puts you in mid-table. It takes you out of the doldrums of 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, and you're looking a little bit higher, and your outlook seems to be a little more positive and less bleak when you're thinking, well, actually, if he scores 10 goals in 10 games. That's a positive, and then he's bringing other players into it. He can bring in Garner, he can bring in Danjuma, he can bring in McNeil, that kind of stuff. And if he's able to do that, as well as get, if he comes away with 8 goals this season, I think that'd be a big reward and a massive return for Everton.
So what's your reaction, Dave, to what we've seen from Everton during this transfer window? Because, as I say, 5 signings, but, these include the youngster Chimiti, who is, I think you could argue, clearly still learning the game. And then there's those who have questioned whether maybe Ashley Young still has got what it takes to be an effective member of the squad. In terms of what you've seen in the transfer window, what's your reaction to the business that Everton have done?
I think... Yeah, I can look at the ins with a bit of positivity, Committee, Danjuma, and Beto, that kind of thing. But then we look at the outgoings as well, and you go, well, we're looking at getting rid of Damari Gray, who's now going to be staying at the club. But I think the big one there was not replacing. I know it's late in the transfer window, very, very late, but we've all knew it was coming, and that's not replacing Iwobi. We've been given 22 million for him, and we didn't do it. I think we sat on our haunches far too much when we were looking out for Nonto, which didn't happen again. We seem to go back to Leeds with the begging bowl. So will you take this deal? Will you take this offer? And Leeds didn't want to know. And in the end, I think Leeds just didn't want to deal with us. And we've put this is Everton over and over again, where you put your eggs in the one basket and hope that it comes true, hoping something comes out of it. But I think it's good, but it's disappointing in a way for this transfer window. It's good that we have made signings. We brought in a striker, we brought in pace in Danjuma, and we've made strides in building for the future. But at the same time, the here and now is that we've sold probably one of our most creative midfielders and not replaced them. And now you're then looking towards January when the when the African Cup of Nations comes around, and you're going to be losing players. And it's like, oh, well, are we basically just starting again then in January? We're going to have to get more loan players. Are we going to have to buy someone? Are we going to be able to utilise that money? You know, Tom Cannon's gone, Iwobi's gone, so there's possibly 30 million. But is that going to be, are we going to be allowed to spend that in January? And I think we have to, because we haven't done it now, but we really should have.
And that 22 million for Iwobi, that's a good bit of business for Everton, would you say?
Considering he wasn't going to sign a new contract and he's on the last year of his contract, 22 million is absolutely fabulous for Everton. It's a great return, because we were going to lose him for nothing in next August, next May, and you know we've had to. It's either cash in now or lose them for free, and we've done that far too many times with players where we just had to let them go, and we spent that much money on them. It's like, well, what's the return? So I think we've had to, from a business sense, we've had to act now, but then we've not done anything to replace him. So from a business sense, yeah, it's great. From a professional and football side, it's like, that's just crackers.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, as you say, it's what Everton do with that money now. Once it's in the coffers, how do they spend that come January? A word about Neil Maupay. He's gone back to Brentford for a second spell. He joins on a season-long loan. I think it's fair to say with Neil Maupay, it's never really worked out for him, has it, at Everton?
No, and he was a last-minute buy when we got him in the first place. You know, I can't even remember who we were looking at the time. And we ended up going, okay, well, we'll just have to pick up Neil Maupay, because I can't even remember who it was. What wasn't going to sign. I think it might have been Danjuma, actually. Danjuma went to Spurs, so we were, okay, well, we're going to have to get Neil Maupay. And I think that's where we've just gone, okay, well, we've just gone, well, what's the alternative? And it's unfair. He just hasn't. It hasn't worked for the lad, and unfortunately, he hasn't been suited to Everton. You know, Brentford love him. You know, the Brentford fans. You know, they've took to him. He scored goals when he was at Brentford in the Championship and stuff like that. So, you know, I hope his luck turns, because he just seems like a decent fella as well. But it's just not worked at Everton, and that's unfortunate. But how many players do you know that they've come over to Everton and it's just not worked for them? You know, you can write a book on it.
Yeah, you can. And, you know, I was also thinking as well about some of the talent that Sean Dyche has that potentially he doesn't use as often as he should do. I was looking at some of the comments on the fans forum, and, you know, he's brought Beto in for 26-30 million, but he sold Ellis Sims, of course, who had limited minutes, but, you know, he played really well for Everton when he was on the pitch, sold for 8 million. Also, he's had that reluctance, hasn't he, to play Demarai Gray and also Branthwaite up until now. Do you think with Sean Dyche there is this situation where potentially he doesn't always recognise some of the talent that he has within the squad?
I think so, and I think that's probably what bit him in the backside of Burnley. You know, he's had that opportunity. I mean, one that'll stand out with, you know, when he was at Burnley was Maxwell Cornet. You know, he a terrific player. Dyche just didn't seem to take to him, and it was bizarre. But the same scenario with Demarai Gray, but also with Gray, he's that 1 in 7 player. You know, he'll give you the flash of brilliance, but then you won't see him for like 4 or 5 games. And I can see where Dyche comes from with that, because he wants people to be there now and, you know, performing week in, week out. But there's also that blind side to him, like the whole Michael Keane situation. So, I mean, nobody's perfect, I get that. But at the same time, it's like, well, what do you want from a player, Sean? What do you need? You know, do you need them to be a 6'5" clogger, or do you need them to be a silky paced winger who's going to give you the opportunities and give you goals? And you can't find a medium with him, because he'll have that in the side, but then he'll bomb out players like that as well at the same time. So you need. I think he needs to. He needs to almost get out of that mentality in his head that he's got to have a team of big, solid players. He needs to probably bring in that bit of class, that bit of, you know, a little bit of extra talent, and that bit of a player who's a bit unorthodox and who's just like, well, I don't want to be stuck in a kind of this position. I want to be, you know, to drift. I want to be able to be a bit more creative, and that's what we just lack that. But I think the couple of signings that we've made there will make the difference.
I think, clearly it needs to do because, we spoke on this show a couple of weeks ago and we know it's been a hugely disappointing start of the season for Everton. And I think you said to me a couple of weeks ago, Dave, that, Everton as a club had lost their identity, with what we've seen on the pitch, together with the significant concerns over investment, because since we last spoke, of course, the collapse of the MSP deal was reported. And again, it just continues to raise questions, doesn't it, about the way this club's being run. And Evertonians are looking for positives wherever they can. Whether this is the start of things with what we've seen in the last week, I don't know. But there are still huge concerns there for Evertonians at this stage of the season.
Yeah, and I think now where we're looking for positivity, we're also looking for answers. Why did the MSP deal fall through? Who's in the background that suddenly kiboshed this deal? Who are these entities that are within the club that have said, listen, we want paying first? But who is they? There was the whole thing that said the MSP wanted to put in 100 million to the stadium and then give us X amount for the actual club itself and for the investment. But then there's an entity within the club that says we want paying first and we want our debts paying. But who are they and why have these suddenly raised their head? The club needs now to be more transparent with the fans. They've got all the fan advisory boards and stuff like this, which aren't worth the paper they're written on, unfortunately, because they're just given the brush off by the club. And fans deserve better. Well, it's simple as that. We've been through the ringer more than most clubs, I would say. I know there'll probably be clubs that go, well, hang on, we're rubbish as well. But at the same time, you look at Everton, you look from where they've been, and where we were literally at the start of, when are we on 2023, the start of 2015, we weren't in a bad position. And since Moshiri's come in, it's just been spend, but then, it's been met with this double-edged sword that said, no, well, you're not going to be a good side. You can buy all these players, but they're not going to be very good. You're going to owe all this money. You're going to have a shiny new stadium, but you're not really going to have a team to play in it. You'd be lucky you're in the Premier League at this rate and stuff like that. So I think the club needs to give us that transparency now. I mean, I know I said that I was in a position a couple of weeks ago where I said, so just give me something where I'm not looking over my back at Burnley, Sheff United and Luton. And here I am looking at Sheff United, Luton and Burnley. Exactly, less than a month after me setting it. And, tell fans, give the fans something that goes, okay, well, this is the direction that we're going in. Because you're not giving us anything. We're having to feed off scraps and hearing the hearsay and everything else. And we just need that. Give me an answer and I'll be happy. And I think maybe not happy, but I'll have a bit more clarity and I'll have a little bit more, okay, well, that's why. That's the reason why things are happening. That's the reason why this player's had to go. That's the reason why we've had to, release this player and stuff like that. But just give us the transparency, be truthful to the fans, and start by doing what we need to do first, and that is the removal of the owner, really, and Bill Kenwright, because that's where it all ultimately ends.
Well, we will see what develops, and clearly, Dave, Everton have now got 2 weeks to regroup and also to get some quality training in before their next competitive game, which is at home to Arsenal 2 weeks today. In the next 2 weeks, it's clearly imperative, isn't it, that Sean Dyche can get the players together and address the fragility and maybe the disconnect that we've seen from the squad within recent games, and really get that squad together for that big game against Arsenal 2 weeks today.
Definitely. I mean, I think the good thing is we've got several players due back. We've got Calvert-Lewin, Jack Harrison, and even looking at it, someone like Dele Alli is potentially available as well. We've shifted a load of money around by getting rid of players, so money is actually available for us to allow these players to play. And I think, for all the stuff that was going on with Dele Alli, I think bringing him back in might actually be beneficial to Everton in the end. We need that creative spark, and we all know that Dele Alli is capable of that. If we just got to try and revive him. But I think, like you say, we've got 2 weeks now to get ourselves back in order. We've stopped the rot a little bit, I suppose. Get players back in, get them fit, get them running, get them training. I think, the likes of people who just come in, Dan Juma, Beto, kind of stuff, it's literally their first week. Beto's first week in an Everton shirt, so a good 2 week solid training, no games, and just getting back to fitness and everything will be the rewarding thing for Everton, and this has come at a good time. I think this international break.
Okay. Well, listen, it's really good to talk to you, Dave. It's always good to get your thoughts. Just to remind listeners, finished 2-2 today away at Sheffield United. Everton beginning to score goals now. Decore and Danjuma on the score sheet today.